a metric called deal power. So you tell them what kind of deal you're looking for and what is the power of the neighborhood to give you that deal.
Welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. This is the podcast where we help you challenge your mindset and discover where you are. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Ideal Investor Show, where we always bring you great guests, experts, or people who have really cool stuff. And today we have one like that. We have Tapan Trevedi. I hope I said that reasonably well.
You
He
did,
is an
yes. Tapan
expert
Trevedi, yes.
and he will explain what it is. Tapan, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into this awesome tool that you have developed for our real estate investing community, tell me a little bit about your background, kind of like how did you get into real estate and then ultimately developing this tool?
Okay, so I started in 2009 because like many of us, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and I clicked on something and I took a few classes and uh, got a rental, got my first flip, and the first flip paid for like 1/3 of the yearly salary. And it took me like a month and a half to do that. Because in those days, doing flip deals was easy.
Yeah.
So that's how I got started. And then I quit the job in about a year and a half and started accumulating rentals. I believe the nice little quip that we used to do in those days was keep flip three and keep one free.
Right.
So it was like if you flip three houses, you will have enough to keep one free and clear for yourself. It's not the case anymore, but in those days you could. And we did a bunch of those and started collecting the portfolio. Then, my biggest strength that I consider is I ran a RIA in Sacramento, a real estate investment association, a real estate investment club for 14 years. And pre-pandemic, I ran that for 14 years, one meeting a month and a bunch of events throughout the year. And I've had a chance to have deep, meaningful conversations with literally thousands of real estate investors. So kind of understand what a newbie thinks like, what experienced people thinks like, what's the experience level, what is the gradual path, how they go up and stuff. So I understood what it is. And all throughout, the one common thing was that there's no cash flow in a lot of places. I just had this idea that there's no cash flow in a lot of places because, we are feeling this locally in Sacramento. I'm sure you're feeling it in. So then I started looking around to see how many places are like that. And at that point, I just said things, very vague words like places. There's either a metro area or a neighborhood or a
Right.
census tract or blog group or whatever. But I just said places in those days. And eventually I realized that there's total 380 metro areas in the USA. Out of that, 180 metro areas are such that buying a rental locally that cash flows more than 3 or 4% is impossible. So that covers roughly 110 million population. That's nearly 1/3 of the country. It's a huge problem. Right. So the only thing that we can do, all of us people that are facing, I call this the dry backyard problem, is go remote. We got to go someplace else because our backyard is just not giving us any safe, decent deals. So what we do is you have to go remote. And there's one of the two things we do, right? We either go ahead and depend upon the boots on the ground, or we go and take a trip ourselves. Right. And I have done a lot of the land, and I in my webinars and stuff, I talk about the fact that there was one time that I went into to buy an apartment complex in Henderson, Nevada, and I was put into an almost life-threatening situation because I had no idea what was going on out there, and I was just doing my due diligence check, and that's when I realized I was like, yeah, you can't just go places and realize. So it's like, okay, why do I need to depend upon the boots on the ground what they are saying before I go there and figure out what it's like, So that's when I started looking for data. I'm like, precise knowledge will help. And then I finally figured out the method that we're going to talk about, the secrets method. And then I put together this tool where to invest, the address evaluator, where you just kind of drop in an address. It'll tell you everything that an investor would need to know. So that's how I came along, my journey, and then finally seeing the problem, tackling it, and mm, forming this tool.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So real quick, I mean, if I had that story, right, just so for the audience to understand, I would probably have to go out and figure out somebody who can make something like that. How come that you knew how to make a tool like
I failed a lot.
that?
That's I have failed a lot. I have tried so many things because it became almost like my second obsession. I just
Oh,
started,
okay.
I've visiting places and like, okay, this doesn't work. Okay, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. So the aspects of the method, secrets is an acronym, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
size, economic diversity, crime, residence, real estate, equity and cash flow, team building, and swings and trends, right? Those are the 8 things. So each data point in there, each dashboard, if you may, has each part of the method has like, okay, what happens if you don't do that, right? So size is when I went into a small town in Texas, Kyle, Texas, and I had like this fourplex out there, and I was just trying to get enough cash flow to pay my what was my health insurance bill at that point, because I was still trying to get my cash flow. So I was going like, okay, which house is going to pay for which bill? And I went into Kyle, Texas, and they issued a red tag for the sign for the fourplex not being bright enough, which was silly because it's just a couple of bulbs, whatever. If you had
Yeah.
to, like, you don't need to red tag that, but you do. So I sent a contractor to the office and they charged me $12,000. $12,000 for just changing 3 or 4 light bulbs. And that's when I realized if you go into small towns of a metro area population under 200,000, then you are always going to be a sort of a target for them because they are looking for opportunities for income. In
Right.
real estate, we are always a target. So size, that's how I came up with that. Okay, we always have to look for a certain size area, metro area, and certain size neighborhood. And then economic diversity, I had friends that invested in North Dakota about 7, 8 years. If you've been in the game for a while, so you know what I'm talking about probably. Um, North Dakota, when shale oil was found,
Yeah,
North
right.
Dakota was hot. Like you could put like 5 to 6 up to 10 trailers and make a trailer park and put a fence around it, solar, and a few porta potties. And Roughnecks just needed a place to crash.
Yeah, they had no
So
housing at all. Yeah.
there's no housing out there, and they would pay like up to 2,500, 3,000 a month for that because they were making 10, 15K a month. So they were like, okay, we'll just pay that and be done with it. But then shale oil disappeared. It's a short time thing, and there was literally no other economy out there to support anything else. And then all the businesses went down. So same thing with the U.S. military. If the military base is the only thing that is supporting the town, then you should not. I don't invest there because the military actually prides itself upon taking everything out in 45 days if they need it to.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I love our soldiers. I love our armed forces, but economically, you should not. If that's the only game in town, right? So we say that not a single industry should employ more than 25% of the occupants of the metro area. So each part of the secrets method of like I know what happens if you don't do that. So that's how we kind of came along that.
Yeah, so can I ask, is it ultimately gonna give, you said you can put in any address basically. Are you ultimately gonna get a score or like a score card, or how does somebody that is listening to us have to imagine?
Okay, so the two tools, right? So one is a neighborhood finder which is a reverse search. You input your parameters, what you are looking for. Like I have $25,000 in capital and I'm looking for single family houses and I'm looking for this level of single family houses. I'm looking for cash flow. And then you
Right.
can specify whether you are looking for in Pennsylvania, in this metro area, or San Diego, or whatever that is, right? All throughout the country, you specify a geographical location if you wanted to, or you could just leave it blank. And it will show you the best neighborhoods all over the country for your criteria. And within that, we have a metric called deal power. So you tell them what kind of deal you're looking for and what is the power of the neighborhood to give you that deal. So we have that. That's the one tool. And then the other one is the address evaluator, where you go ahead and start with the address and say, show me, I want to buy this property. What's the location around that? So those are the two tools that we have developed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the second one is probably most suitable. I mean, at least our clients, what I'm always suggest, and I have done it myself, I call it clustering, right? Where,
Yeah.
especially when like we work with turnkey providers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we only buy from a turnkey provider. So if I take an example, we buy like in Davenport, Idaho, we buy our first single family property from a turnkey provider.
Idaho or Iowa?
Iowa, sorry. Yeah. And
I love the Quad Cities. I love the Quad Cities. One of my home run deals is in Davenport. So I know the Quad Cities very well.
yeah, but what me too, and what I was getting at is, so you get one in Davenport, and then you would say, okay, I want to build a cluster of 4 or 5 or so in this Quad City area. So that would really be helpful then to say, well, it might not necessarily be from a turnkey provider, but it is meeting the criteria and it is in the same general area. Because one thing I've also learned, and I think our clients would agree and our listeners would agree, if you have already a relationship with someone who is managing your property and you tell them, hey, I'm buying another 1 or 2, would you be interested to manage those for me as well? Obvious. I have not ever heard that somebody said, no, I wouldn't. Right. So it's very rare that a property manager that has capacity would say, I don't take something in addition to an existing client's portfolio already. So then having a tool where you can actually say, for my 25, 30, 35 grand, what can I find in this general area would be perfect. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this. And we also have a team building tab. So we have local realtors, investor-friendly realtors, property managers, hard money lenders, brokers, contractors, all those people that you can talk to. We have sifted through a few. We don't know, we don't have a rating system or anything, but we do make it really easy for you to go ahead and start dialing if you need it to. So we
So
do have a
coming
team
back,
building
yeah,
tab in there.
thank you, Tapan. Coming back to what would be kind of like for somebody who doesn't have anything in front of them, they're listening to us, what would they have to imagine the output to be? Let's say we're taking the one where you put in the address. Are they going to get a report or a scorecard or an overall score, or how does the output
Right.
look like?
So if they do the address,
Yeah,
right, evaluator, then they can get this nice little PDF of all the 8 aspects of their address in a thing. And people are using it for various different things. So multifamily syndications, people are using the reports as a location info in the multifamily syndications. That's one. People are using it to raise capital because when you are raising capital and you are taking the capital someplace else, the first thing that they're going to ask you is, okay, where are you taking my money? What's going on out there?
right,
So you kind of show them this is what's going on out there. These are all the salient facts. This is the good, this is the bad, this is the not so good, whatever of the location, right? So it allows you to make your investor feel more at peace with the location, which is one
right.
of the biggest things. So that's Wholesalers are using it now. They are basically somebody in Ohio is a big place where a lot of people are using this. Ohio, because Cincinnati, Cleveland, Toledo, all those places, they have good cash flow. And the typical wholesaling, the way it works is they kind of try to get a fixer and sell it to a flipper,
Right.
right? And that's roughly about 8% of all transactions. The flipping or the value add, right? It's
Right.
about 8% of all transactions. But when you consider just the buying rentals for cash flow, that is in terms of investment, like roughly about 81% of the rest of the transaction within the investment world, right? So what people are figuring out is that if I can just get something that cash flows nicely at just 90% of the value and sell it, it's a lot easier to sell that puppy to somebody in California
Right.
than it is to find a fixer and try to sell it to a local Ohio person. So
Right.
that's another use case that we have.
Okay, very
These
cool.
are the different, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for explaining that. The last thing I wanted to ask you about this awesome tool is obviously people would want to have some idea, and I'm sure that you're the perfect person to answer this. How do you make sure that the data is accurate? Where do you get the information so that you can actually create that nice PDF?
So we have, as of a month back, we have 245 different data sources.
Okay.
So each graph kind of comes with it, and they're all different level of refreshes. Like crime refreshes almost every week.
Okay.
There's appraiser data that refreshes daily, as you know. There's other data that comes from the ACS, and that's like about once a year. There's other data that comes every month, and there's different level of refreshes for it also. But it's we're pretty proud of what we have created, and we stand behind our data, right? I mean,
So
people are
would you
using
say
it to
that
actually.
the data sources are like publicly available data sources, or are there some where
There are
you have to
some of
find it?
them that are publicly available, but we have to go ahead and massage it so
Yeah.
that they meet our criteria. So here's the biggest thing, okay? Um, what is the first thing that people ask you when you say, I am thinking of investing in, let's say, I'm just going to pull a city out of the hat, Davenport. Let's say we both know
Right.
Davenport. So what they're going to say is, what is the best zip code
Right.
for Davenport, right? And zip codes literally have nothing to do with real estate investments. Really, zip codes were built so that mail carriers can deliver mail efficiently.
Right.
That's it. It just happened to be the lowest common user-friendly group of data conglomerate that was available. That's it, right?
Right.
But neighborhoods is how people behave,
Right.
right? So, and I'll send you this one graphic of a single zip code in Cleveland that has 8 different neighborhoods
Right.
within it, right? And the property values go from 565,000 median all the way down to 103 median, right? In different neighborhoods. So there's 565, 385, 150, 103, 103, 105, and 208. 8 different neighborhoods, 8 different median property values, different levels of crime. So if you go by zip code, you are messed up. So to answer your question, when we get the data, we go ahead and make sure that it's going into the right neighborhood boundary and not by the zip code. That's the one big thing that we do, right? So there's a lot of things that we do to the data to make sure that it's very user friendly, accurate, and usable for our users.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And I think that
and
is a
that's the tech,
super,
you know.
Yeah, and that's the super important thing. Hey, let's take a quick break for a message from our sponsors. If you're serious about growing your wealth, you know the best opportunities aren't always the most obvious. That's why we've partnered with Bob Bernodas of Franchise with Bob. He specializes in helping investors like you leverage franchising an overlooked but highly profitable way to create semi-passive income. And for a limited time, Bob is giving our listeners access to his course on franchise investing for free. Inside, you'll learn how to evaluate franchises, minimize risk, and maximize your returns. This course is normally sold for $499, so don't miss out and claim your free course now at edu.franchisewithbob.com/ideal. I remember once I did some analysis for somebody where a turnkey provider was kind of asking if we would be interested to offer their properties to our clients. And I didn't know any better. I just basically wanted to do what I could find, put in the location, into Google basically, and said and wanted to know what the crime rate was. And it basically said way above national average. And you have to keep in mind this like 15 years ago. So I'm like, okay, I don't know that I want for our clients to have properties that are in an area. Later, when I went there, at the time I was somebody who actually still flew around and went there and looked at it, but I didn't go there for the crime rate. I went for another reason. And I talked to a person who's still to this day a friend of mine, and he said, yeah, but see, what you didn't do is you didn't look at what this statistical value actually meant. And I'm like, what do you mean? What are you telling me? He said, well, this particular thing that you looked into it compared the crime rate in our area to a crime rate that was measured per 100,000 people, right? And so if you have a small location and they have one crime in a year and the whole location has 10,000 people, the percentage per 100,000 is off the charts, basically,
Right.
and
And
so that's why
do you
I
want to
asked
hear
about.
what we have done for that?
Yes, sure.
So our crime dashboard has, first of all, two categories of crime: personal crime and property crime, right?
Right.
And the personal crime is murder, rape, assault, and robbery. And the property crime are burglary, larceny, motor vehicle crime, things like that, right? So personal crime brings down both property values and rents. Property crime brings down mostly just the rents. It doesn't affect the property values as much. It's some. So for each crime, we will give you where the neighborhood falls compared to all the neighborhoods in the country. We just have this nice little speedometer graph so you can see where it falls all around the country. And then we give you another graph that tells you how it is compared to the metro area. So where it falls nationally and where it falls locally. You can make a decision like that real quickly, because the thing is, we're not statisticians.
Right.
How do we go ahead and determine anything in real estate? By comps, right? How do we determine the value of rents? We look at similar rents in the neighborhood and figure out, okay, these are the rents of these units. How do we the value of properties? We look at comps. So we created neighborhood crime comps
Right.
that you can compare the neighborhood all over the country and compare the neighborhood locally and figure out, is this something that is tolerable or not? And then we give you nice little guidelines. Okay, if it's nationally red in more than one, high risk, don't probably don't go there. But if it's property crime, one of the property crime is red, everything else is green, that's a rental neighborhood. Your rental neighborhoods are going to have slightly higher elevated crime. You're not going to get the top best A neighborhoods as your rentals. That's not going to happen either, you know. So that's how we tackle the crime problem, because we also ran into that same thing. It was like, if I put something like the chances of being hit by crime, this crime is 1 in 41. What does that mean? Like, I'm not a gambler. Like, I don't know what it means. Like,
Yeah.
why do I need to compare it to, like, what 1 in 41? What does that mean in poker? What does that mean on craps table? Do I need to do that? No. We need to go ahead and figure out what is it compared to the rest of the name. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that's basically what I was getting at when I asked you about the quality of the data, because a lot of, we oftentimes get information without necessarily looking in any level of depth on how that information or that data was actually put together. And you mentioned at the very beginning, like certain things get updated every week. If you happen to hit at the wrong week in the wrong location, it might look like horrible. And a month later, it all smoothes out if nobody actually does anything to it, So there's all kinds of different things.
but
I
that's the thing. I
remember.
mean, there's not that many wild swings in neighborhoods in terms of safety. So the size, economic diversity, and crime are the three main safety. So that's why they are the first,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Then it's the residents and real estate. What kind of residents, who lives there? That we have to watch closely, because populations kind of go up and down depending upon the
yeah.
economic swings locally, right? So that is the more neighborhood population graph, all those things. That's what we watch a lot closely. And then what kind of income swings are happening within the metro area and the neighborhood. Those are the two things that kind of vary a lot. And those we have seen change in like 6 months. But weekly, just because we get the data, it doesn't make that big of a dent. It's dependable data, if that
Okay.
makes sense. Like, there's not
Yeah,
that
yeah,
many.
totally.
The neighborhoods doesn't change. They don't change like that. It takes
Okay.
time. It's a social change, right? I mean, and
Right,
people
right, right. Yeah.
figure out it doesn't happen overnight. So that's the
Okay.
deal.
That's very good to know. Thank you so much. So now that we have basically teased people to really say, where can I, how can I get this? How can I take a look at it? Where do I sign up? Tell us how either with you, or where do they need to go if they're interested to take a look at it?
Yeah. So the website is where-to-invest.io. Right?
Okay.
And the easiest way to kind of figure out what we are all about is, the first thing you all want to know is where to invest, like what's the best city, where's the best cash flow city for me, right? So what you are going to do is we have created a free quiz for you guys, right? So go to quiz.where-to-invest.io/cashflow-city. That's quiz.where-to-invest.io/cashflow-city, and answer a few multiple choice questions, and it'll tell you exactly where to go, and it'll give you the top 6 cities that match you and stuff. And then, if you're interested in the exact neighborhoods, then our starting plan, the just try us out monthly plan, starts at like as low as under $50, right? And that's just on the website and stuff, and you can start it no problem. We want to go for the masses, instead of going for the big data conglomerates and stuff like that. So, we want to go for the mom and pop investors more than anything else.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Tapan. Last question I want to ask real quick, that has nothing to do with all that investing and software stuff, is, if you could meet anybody, who would it be and why?
Alive or from the past, or
Could be anybody, literally anybody.
literally?
Yeah.
In current terms, I think Melania Trump would be one of
Okay.
the most interesting persons to meet, because she has had a front row seat to so much, and she hasn't spoken pretty much anything.
Right.
And what a story. I mean, she comes from a she's I'm from the third world. She's not from the third world, I say, but she's from 2.5 world. She's almost there where she's from.
Well,
And she made it
when she originally came, it was the third world.
yeah. And it's an amazing story. Say what you will about her, but I mean, talk about the will, and she positioned herself and played this right, and whatever it is. It's a fascinating story that, and I read her book, and it only scratches the surface. And there's so much that I want to talk to her about. So that would be my go-to. Like,
yeah, that's an interesting choice. I think you're the first one who chose that one. It's kind of a little bit like the Djokovic, right? Like the tennis player kind of situation, because he is a pretty crazy story too, you know. So.
Oh, is that? Oh, I didn't know. I'll have to look up Joko. Yeah.
Yeah, they're both from Serbia.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's I mean, he is younger than her, obviously, but even when he, I mean, for somebody like him to be trying to become a professional sports anything, you know. So yeah, these are always the most amazing stories for people who come from places where it's really tough to ever, you know, get out of.
Right. And it's a I would love to meet her if I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, when you do, tell us about it, okay?
Yes, I will.
All right, cool. Tapan, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I think you did something great. And I will definitely take a look on behalf of our audience and give them some feedback of what I learned from it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Excellent.
Thank you.